Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have my book haul for the month of March. This was a surprisingly large book haul. I have it divided into three categories. I have the category of books I purchased, books that were sent to me from publishers, and books that were sent to me by authors. I have 20 books in total that I received, 9 of which were books that I purchased, 4 of which were from the authors themselves, that the author specifically sent it to me, and then the rest were from publishers. So I believe that means 7 books that I got from publishers. So I have a lot of books to talk about. Some of these I've already read and reviewed on the channel. So without further ado, let's get into it, starting with the books that I purchased. One of the books I purchased was The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I know I'm starting off with a weird one. Why would you read this, Jonathan? I saw a video of someone talking about it's a cozy winter read, and also saying that they really enjoy the story in this series. And I really have just been intrigued by this concept, and my local bookstore has a ton of copies of this, so it was pretty inexpensive. And so I saw this copy there, and I actually like this format, which is the tall rack mass market. And so I saw this, and I was like, you know what, I want to get it. So I only got the first book, but we'll see how I enjoy it. So that's The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo by Stieg Larsson. I'm doing the Brian Lee Durfee thing of putting them on a shelf, because putting them on the floor was too much. I also found at one of my local bookstores a really rare thing. I found Timothy Zahn's first novel, The Black Collar. This is his first ever novel he did with Daw Books. It's an old copy. You can see those yellowed pages. I actually have the sequel to this, The Backlash Mission, but I didn't want to read it, so I found a copy of The Black Collar. But you can't really find this. There's like a bind-up of 2 of the novels that you can find in some places, but I mean, I don't want that. I want the original. It's a pretty short book. It's only like 260 pages. But I love Timothy Zahn. I love his classic science fiction feeling. He's my favorite science fiction author. So I got that one. I also purchased Hellhole Inferno by Kevin Anderson and Brian Herbert, who have been on Twitter and other places recently the topic of discussion because some people do not like their Dune novels together. However, I have enjoyed the Dune novels I've read from them together, and I own the first 2 books in this Hellhole trilogy. I'm probably going to get demonetized for using that word. Heckhole. That's what we'll call it. Heckhole. No, that sounds worse. Anyway, this is Heckhole Inferno, and this book is the 3rd book in the trilogy. It's a science fiction trilogy. I love Kevin Anderson. I love Brian Herbert's work, so I'm sure I'll really enjoy this one, which has a really nice cover. I like the science fiction cover. Next, okay, so this next purchase or group of purchases is entirely the fault of Brian Lee Durfee and Mike from Mike's Book Reviews. So both of them have, Mike recently has been talking about reading a Ken Follett book, The Pillars of the Earth, which he absolutely loved, and he's done a ton of discussions about it, and he just raved about it. And I actually purchased that a while ago and intend to read it this summer. But he just really inspired me to look out more about Ken Follett. And so I went out looking at Brian Lee Durfee's YouTube channel, and he has videos talking about ranking the Ken Follett books and reviewing them, and I watched them all, and I got really excited. And so I went and bought some big, beefy Ken Follett books, and my number of tomes on my shelves shot up, because Kevin Follett is not brief. So I got 4 Ken Follett books that I purchased this month. And so the first one I got is World Without End, which is the 2nd novel in his Kingsbridge series. Unfortunately, they don't advertise it as being the 2nd novel in the Kingsbridge series, so come on, guys. Marketing, let's do better. But still, it's a beefy, thick hardcover. I think it's about 1,000 pages. Yep, just about 1,000 pages. And so I won't be reading this for a while, but I intend to get to it eventually. The other Ken Follett books I got were his Century trilogy. You have the first book, The Fall of Giants, and the second book, Winter of the World, and the third book, Edge of Eternity. And I don't buy hardcovers used that often, and I really don't buy big beefy books like this that often, but I had some store credit from my local used bookstore, and I don't usually turn in books. I actually turned in books from my grandparents who moved out of their house, and so I decided to get something with that store credit, and that's how I got the Century Trilogy. I basically was able to pay for the Century Trilogy using that store credit, and I'm hoping I enjoy these books. This seems like it's doing like historical fiction, which I enjoy historical fiction, so it should be interesting to read. Those are also books that are like 1,000 pages long, so they're going to be pretty beefy. All right, the last books that I bought this month are two new releases. The first one is The Sunlit Man by Brandon Sanderson. I will have a review of this very soon. I read it, and I have many, many thoughts on it. This is the fourth of the secret projects for Brandon Sanderson. I also have the book Defy the Storm. It is one of the High Republic novels for Star Wars. It is also a new release this month, and it is following the characters of Vernestra Rowe and Avon Staros and a bunch of other characters. And I have, at this point of this release, read this and have thoughts on it. I'm starting it as I'm recording this. And then I'll have that review up later at some point. Or it might be already up. It'll be up eventually. And then now to talk about the books that came from publishers and authors. I have to preface this by saying that, you know, in previous years, I've been sent a book by an author occasionally or a book by a publisher for something occasionally, but 2024 will go down as the year that the New York came knocking. Basically, I've been working with a lot of publishers for a lot of different reasons. So one of the things that happened most recently for me is I joined the podcast Literary Treks. And for that podcast, we have to read and review the books to talk about with the authors. And so Simon & Schuster was very gracious to send us copies of books, those of us on the podcast. And so Simon & Schuster, who owns Gallery Books, sent me Firewall by David Mack, which is a new release this month, one of the Picard novels. It follows 7 of 9 before the events of Picard, but after the events of Voyager. And if you enjoyed the Picard TV show, I would say if you enjoyed the first 2 seasons, you probably will enjoy this book. I read it, I reviewed it for the channel, and I interviewed David Mack as part of Literary Treks. So look up Literary Treks, David Mack, Firewall interview. You'll probably find it. But that was one that I got from the publisher, which was very nice of them to send. I also, from a different publisher, this is from a Random House publisher, it's Titan Books. They sent me the new Picard Art of and Making of the Series. This is an art book, and I won't open it up, but it is a gorgeous book. It has a lot of artwork, and it has a lot of stills from the show. All 3 seasons. It covers the making of all 3 seasons, although season 3 was the best. And he, was amazing. But anyway, it's all about the making of the show. Really beautiful, nice book. It's gotten dust from sitting around too long. I need to keep it undusted. But anyway, I have a review of that. I will have a review of this eventually, and we will be talking about it on Literary Treks. As this records, I don't know if the Literary Treks review is up yet, but it will be up soon at least. So that is Picard, The Making of the Series. This is by Joe Fordham. So there's that book. I'm not going to put that on the shelf because it's going to fall off the shelf. So I'm just going to put it down here for a moment. Now let's talk about the books that I got from another publisher, from Baen. Baen sent me 5 books this month. They sent me the mass market paperback of Wraithbound, which actually I was going to read in the month of April anyway. So they just sent it to me, and it was perfect timing. So I'm going to be reading this in April. Spoiler on my April TBR. They also sent me the novel Mission Critical. This is by Charles E. Gannon with help by Griffin Barber, Chris Kennedy, and Mike Massa. Chris Kennedy owns a huge publishing endeavor, Chris Kennedy Publishing. That's a big indie thing. Anyway, this is part of the Terran Republic series, which I intend to get into one day. They also sent me a new hardcover, United We Stand, edited by John Ringo and Gary Poole. This is from the Black Tide Rising series, which I have also been interested in getting into, but have never read anything from the Black Tide series. And this is a collection of short stories set in that universe. Then they sent me What Price Victory. I actually have read this book. I read it and reviewed it on the channel back in early 2023 when it came out in hardcover, because I got to interview the authors involved. Tim Zahn and Thomas Pope weren't involved in the interview, but the other authors, Jane, Jan, Joel, and David, they were all involved in the interview. So look up What Price Victory interview, Jonathan Cohn, and you'll find it. It was a great discussion that we had. It's an audio-only video, sadly, an audio-only discussion, but still, this was a great discussion. And I now have the trade paperback edition of the book. And then for the final book that Baen sent me is a new release this month, and that is The Icarus Job by Timothy Zahn. This is the third book and most recent release in the Icarus saga. I have read all the Icarus books by Timothy Zahn, really enjoyed them. I already did a review on the channel. You can check that out. And this is just very much a puzzle box sci-fi book, and it has great cover art by Dave Seeley there. And so that is the last of the books that publishers sent me. But what about books that authors have sent me? Yes, authors have reached out to me, indie authors, and I want to preface this by saying I can't get to everyone's books. It's not a slight against anyone that I have to turn down books sometimes. I have a ton of authors reaching out, and I have a ton of books to read. I have books on my channel. You saw I have like 20 books this month. I have stuff I'm interested in. I can't get to everything. So it's not, I don't mean to be disrespectful or to snub your book. It's just that, I only have so much time. So I don't say yes to everything. But when things catch my attention, I'm interested. And so the first book that I'll talk about that was sent to me this month is A Silent Country by Morgan Shank. This is his third book in his A Low Country trilogy. I've read the whole trilogy. I've reviewed the first book. The second book, I had some things going on. I just didn't get around to reviewing it, but I read it and enjoyed it. And this is the third book, and my review should be out soon. It's a very entertaining book. But this is the third book in the trilogy, and not only did he sign the copy for me, which is really nice, but this is the first ever book where I am in the acknowledgments. That was a really cool moment. So, A Silent Country, a self-pub book. Another author also contacted me about their book. It was actually the wife of the author. The author does some marketing, but the wife of this author really does some great marketing for the book. And the book is Devin Erickson's Theft of Fire, the first book in his Planned Orbital Space series. This is an original science fiction novel. It's a self-pub book, but it has a pretty nice cover art. The author told me what the book was about. I said, that looks interesting, and the author's wife asked if I wanted to get a copy, and I said, you know what, this time, sure. And so there's the note that they left me is still in there. But I can actually show you, they actually did sign the book, which was very nice of them. And so I'll get to this eventually. Can't promise exactly when, but I'll get to it eventually. And so that is one of the other self-pubs I was sent. And then I was sent 2 books by the same author at the same time, and that was Michael R. Miller, who sent me the Ascendant, the Song of Chaos, Book 1 that he wrote. He published it with Monolith Books, which I believe is connected to another book company, Broken Binding. That's who it's connected with. Anyway, this is a pretty nice cover, and Michael R. Miller is one of those indie fantasy authors that really is popular, and he's just a nice guy to interact with online. So he sent me that book. He also sent me his collection of 2 novellas, which is titled Last Stand of the Stone Fist, which I thought was really cool. And so this is much shorter. It's a much shorter book, but he sent me that as well. And I'm going to get to all of these eventually, sometime. But again, someday. So those are all the books I was received this month. If you've or purchased, if you've read any of these books, let me know about that in the comment section down below. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.